we were speaking about the session, and we were speaking with many of you, we asked you what you'd like to see, and some of you spoke about what can we learn from some of the markets that have been ahead of us on this journey and through the COVID-19 process. And so what we tried to do is we did a survey in China, Italy, and some other markets, and we put some stats together that I'll show you a bit later. And we also invited a couple of people to speak to them. Jeff had spoken about the impact on the production. He said roughly less than 3 weeks impact of downtime in China and about 6 weeks in Europe. But on this side, we'll also talk about the consumer side of the house, on the demand side of the house, and we'll speak a bit about this. So to speak about this, I've invited a couple of my colleagues. But right before that, let me share some data that we saw when we did a study in the U.S., China, Italy, and some other countries. And what we did was the same questionnaire in all the in many different regions, and I've pulled out 3 different countries to show you. But before that, just to show you, and I'm sure many of you have seen this before, regarding how far we are on the COVID curve, you can see on this chart that China is well ahead, and they bounced back to about 0 down there, and some minor going up over there. This is in terms of daily deaths. And Italy also has gone past the curve. The U.S. has also gone past the curve. But you can see we are roughly about 15 days, it looks like, behind Italy, and about 30 days, 40 days behind China. So in order to understand from that what that impact is on the automotive market, we asked some questions. So the first we wanted to ask, of course, are you likely to buy a vehicle in the next year? Are you considering buying a vehicle in the next year? And you can see, and I put the 3 countries, China, Italy, and the U.S., and you can see China shows about 46% of people considering buying a vehicle in the next year, Italy 24%, and U.S. 15%. So you can see how far China is ahead. And also, they are more willing to consider an electric powertrain in China compared to Italy and the U.S., 34% versus 21%. This ties also with what Jeff was saying earlier regarding the electric powertrain also maybe not being as hurt as bad as some of the other vehicles. In addition, that's just consideration. We also asked, are you willing to go to a dealer to shop for the vehicle or to service your vehicle? And what we found out is over 50%, they are now in China. This was done at the same time, probably a couple of weeks back. China is saying 57% are willing to go to a dealer to shop for a vehicle at this time. Italy only 25%, and the U.S. only 13%. Again, this was fielded earlier, late last month, early this month, over the last about 3 to 4 weeks ago. You can also see that they are more comfortable bringing their vehicles into the dealership for service. China about 80%, Italy about 45%, close to 50%, and the U.S. So you can see in all these metrics, China is ahead and slowly reopening. And they are also, very interestingly, more willing to purchase a vehicle online. Over almost 2/3 of Chinese consumers are willing to consider purchasing a vehicle online. But the Italy and the U.S. not far behind, in this case, going faster. Obviously, there are franchise laws that and other considerations across the different markets that will be considered. But those are what we see in the 3 markets. Also, China is more open. The consumers are indicating that they are more open to door-to-door test drives where they left the vehicle at their door for the test drive, and the final delivery, they'll be willing to take it at their home. So they're more open to this, and they like it. Almost 3/4 in China, Italy, close to 50%, 40%, and the U.S. about 35% there. And that's what we're seeing across the different markets in terms of openness. So all this is just numbers. What I also want to do is invite one of my colleagues from China, David Rao, to join us. And I'm very sorry David had to join. It's 1:30 in the morning his time, so we really appreciate his joining us. And what we wanted to hear from the horse's mouth, how's it going in China, and tell us a bit about the road to recovery. In this case, David is unable to control the screen, so David, just please let me know when you're ready to speak, and we have your title slide up.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Davey calling from China. It's very nice to have this opportunity to talk to you and share with you about our China experience. I just checked the news. In today's news, it is reported that throughout China, there are only less than 200 existing cases left. And in the city I live in Shanghai, there were only less than 10 existing cases. So you can see that China's battle against COVID-19 has been entered into a new stage, with the focus moving to preventing the imported cases as well as the economic recovery. And as Jacob just said, we can see that China's consumers' confidence towards the economic recovery is very strong. I know it's a long journey. It has been 4 months, more than 4 months, since China first discovered the disease. So if we look back during that uncertainty period, you can see that people may spend more time on the hobbies that they are good at. For example, they watch TV during the lockdown period, cook their favorite dish from scratch. So we can see that during the uncertainty period, people spend a lot of time at home and doing the behaviors they are familiar with. That shows that their psychological reflection that they want to control the environment. Next slide, please. And overall, they feel very satisfied, and they can about the new lifestyle. We can see the majority of the consumers can adjust themselves very quickly to fit with the new lifestyle. But the single biggest unmet needs was they can't go out. That was the biggest unmet need during our survey. We found that Chinese consumers claimed. And that also triggered a lot of consumers to buy a car, buy their own car. And as Jacob's figure just showed, that there are more and more people realize that it will be more convenient to own a private car, and also it will be safe, especially if you have kids or seniors live together. It will be more safe to own your own car instead of using public transport. So in other words, the COVID-19 to some extent does trigger consumers' needs to buy the car. Next slide, please. So during the whole COVID-19 period, we see that Chinese business demonstrated a very strong social responsibility. A lot of Chinese brands include the automotive brands like Geely and Volkswagen. They donate huge amount of money or medical device to the government or to the hospitals directly. And we see that the public, Chinese consumers also believe that these major brands does have the social obligation to let their consumers, and so they appreciate these big brands to do such kind of donations. And in return, they claim that they will buy those big brand products. Next slide. So till now, the situation, as I just mentioned, the battle against the COVID-19 has been moved to a new stage. And the resumption rate is across all the industries really high. For example, in the retail industry, almost all the supermarkets and stores are open. And in the automotive retail industry, it's a similar situation. 97% of the shops are open now. Next slide. But the COVID-19 does generate significant impact towards lots of industries. We see a significant decline in the retail market. It's about 20% in Q1. And the whole national GDP also declined 6.8% in Q1. And the impact towards different industry and categories are varied. For example, the service industry got significant impact, as well as the tourist and transportation industry. And not to say the automotive industry also got significant decline. the figures we receive, the overall car volume sales declined more than 40% in Q1. But the good news is in April, the whole sales were up 4.4% from against April 2019. And also in the first 2 weeks in May, and in the news I just read that it says that the growth trend remained. So I would say the situation is so far so good. And we can see that, next slide, we can see that some major players like Volkswagen or Geely all get double-digit decline, all get double-digit increase. And especially for the premium segment, when the whole sales decline in Q1, premium segment gets least impact. And now in April, when we see the recovery trend, and the premium segment got the double-digit increase. There are mixed reasons behind this increase. Of course, as I mentioned, it was triggered by the repressed needs, the accumulated purchase needs of the new car. And also there were the additional needs that they want to buy the car. And the government also played a very important role in putting the incentive and supporting the retail industries. And especially in the last week and this week, the National Congress is having the annual party in Beijing. And it is reported that they will put more incentives to encourage the consumption of the car. So we do expect that the situation can get better. And I would say, of course, throughout the year, it is still very conservative that the market, it will take a long time to recover. But at least so far so good. And we do see some strong signals that consumers' confidence is bouncing back. And the strong sales situation can return in the future. Okay. That's all for my presentation. I will pass back to Jetbus to play 2 videos to show what China market looks like in the latest situation.
Thank you very much. And hopefully you should be seeing the screen, and I will show you a couple of videos that we are seeing from China. So again, thank you very much, David, for sharing that with us. What we also want to do was show you a couple of videos from China about how they're opening up the retail. And the first one you saw was from a Chevrolet dealership and what they're doing there, especially in terms of measuring the temperature, wearing masks, both in the sales and service shop, and trying to do those things, and also sending messages to their consumers that they're back ready for operation. Another interesting one we saw was one I'll just show now, hopefully, which shows the extensive cleaning that is done. Thank you. And hopefully you could see that that was also another video, extensive cleaning that was done, and also some of the things that we're seeing in terms of trying to get consumers to get confidence back. And you might have seen that that was delivering the key through a drone to the consumer. All ways to try and show the consumer, admittedly somewhat gimmicky, because you still have to deliver the car, but always to try and convey the messages to the consumer that they are already open for business and it is safe and safe for the consumer to interact with them. So those are a couple of videos that we saw from China. And again, thank you very much, David. I know it's 1:30, so hopefully you can go back to bed. But we also wanted to look at Italy and get some feedback from Italy on what's happening in the market there. So I asked one of my colleagues from Italy, Enrico Nulli, to speak about some of the things that they're seeing over there. So Enrico, if you can tell us a bit more, I'm going to advance the slide and hopefully you can see a slide. And please let us know what you're seeing in Italy.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Enrico from Milano, Italy. Thank you very much. What we can say you is after 2 months of hard lockdown on the 4th May, the Italian government allowed the opening of all commercial activities, including dealerships. This reopening is conditioning by the application of health safety rules. In case of not compliance of these rules, the commercial activity can be closed and fined. Many manufacturers took in place security programs and gave this program a name.
So Enrico, can you
better communicate?
Can you speak closer to the microphone?
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone, can you speak closer to the microphone? We can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello,
yes,
do you hear
yes.
me now?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. What I was saying is that many manufacturers took in place security programs and gave this a name. This to better communicate with their customer the particular situation. Consider that in this moment there is an important theme related to the fear of people for the contagion. As you can see in the picture, for example, PSA Group has branded its proper program, We All Care. See also the logo. In general, the safety plans of the dealership provide employees and customer temperature measurement. The desk, the glasses partition, and the chair are sanitized every morning. The chair placed in front of the desk at 1 meter to maintain a safe distance, no longer offer any type of refreshment, glasses partition on the seller desk, cars are sanitized every time someone comes into contact with the interior. But now let's go to her, the direct experience of two PSA sales manager of a dealership in Milano with 2 videos. Thank you. Please go, Jacob.
Thank you, Enrico. What we want to do is again share 2 other videos from my colleagues in Italy that have done some investigations and also some interviews of some dealers there. And here we have put a soundtrack at the bottom. So hopefully you'll be able to see it when it comes up, about test drives. I will just speak along. Our protocol requires 2 people in the car, and they require 1 person in the front and 1 person in the rear. And at the end of the test drive, the car is stopped and sanitized for 30 minutes after that before the next test drive to assure the recycling of internal air. The test drive is also carried out with masks and gloves that they supply, and they're trying to manage everything by appointment. This seems to be the best way to better plan all activities. One last video that we also heard from them, and some questions that we were asking our colleagues or our people in Italy. So we asked about the service, and they say they're increasing the development of the web channel, and many of the contacts is placed through the web, which is already frequented, and they have several social channels to promote new products and maintain constant communication with people on the web. They're also telling us that this step has an edge in acceleration, so we are seeing more sales negotiations by the web. It appears they also have a peak in visits, so the dealers are developing their own YouTube channel for demonstration to their consumers. And can they do the negotiation by video call? They're telling us that in this period, web requests are increased and leads and appointments are increasing, even before mentioning the service. And people who are arriving without an appointment have decreased, so they are making it more of a formal event. And the question that we asked is, anyone doing the entire experience by the web? We're told that they have closed some contracts and some negotiations entirely on the web. There has been acceleration there. And even this was before they gave the opportunity to the customer to take without going to the dealership. And of course, given the type of car that they sell, this is a PSA dealership, and people habits, they prefer still to come to the dealership. So that still seems to be an important part of the final closing, even though they could do it entirely by the web. On the other hand, they say that the web channel is more suitable for this kind of environment. And during these 2 months of lockdown, what this has done is it's basically accelerated it, the entire process. And are we witnessing a total virtual passage, a total online experience? Yes. They have proposed to deliver the vehicle at home, and so the PSA, the retail Milano customer, if they want, they can close the entire purchase, and they don't have to do it to trade off, because unfortunately, of course, they still have to take the used car to the dealership. But other than that, it seems to be all virtual, that they can do it. At least they're offering that opportunity. So again, thank you very much to my Italian colleagues and my Chinese colleagues for the time in this. What we will try and do is go back to the session, Ellen, and we'll continue with the rest of the presentation without that. Okay. Ellen, do we have control back to the presentation?
Yeah, Jacob, are you not seeing it?
No, I'm not seeing it. If everyone else is seeing it, I can introduce our next speaker, and then we can go ahead. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Chris Koenig is our next speaker from the Channels Performance Group. And given all that we're seeing that's happening in the retail and how dealerships are changing, we wanted to hear any other learnings that we're finding out from other industries in retail, and also how we can make sure that they feel safe. So Chris, thank you very much for your time. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Jacob. Well, in just a second, I want to looking for the slides to appear as well. Here, just a moment. Mike, I'm going to ask for control from you. Here, I'm requesting control. Let me see if I have that now.
You should have control now, Chris.
Okay, trying again here. Mike, there we go. It just moves slower than I expected, unless...
No, that's you.
Okay, let me see if I can get that to work, Mike. If not, I'll just ask you to push the slides up. Again, thanks, everyone, and I apologize for not being able to be on video, having some web camera issues here. But again, I'm Chris Ketting. I've spent over 2 years managing research programs across a variety of industries and applications. My primary focus has been channel performance. That is measuring the application of standards and strategies across retail networks, using mystery shopping, audits, and other technology-based solutions. On Frank's request, I wanted to share some findings from our new ongoing Consumer Health and Safety Index. What actions are most important based on those findings, and an example of how those actions are being applied in the retail auto industry. So that'll be coming up at the end. Just to clarify, this first index wave has been focused on industries already open. But we do have the measuring and benchmarking of retail auto planned for our upcoming waves here. However, we know the findings are applicable across industries, wherever consumers and organizations engage in a brick and mortar environment. And so those findings are applicable to the retail auto industry as well. That's, okay. So now, we know that consumers still shop brick and mortar when necessary, even in the COVID stay-at-home environment. In our index survey of 2,000 plus consumers, the majority have at the very in our index survey of 2,000 plus consumers, the majority have at the very least shop for groceries, fuel their vehicles, and are shopping big box locations. But I ask that you keep these three essential shopping environments in mind as we look at the next few slides. So what do American consumers feel about health and safety now that we're in this new and evolving environment? It's no surprise that our studies found that health and safety are the most important factors when returning to shopping in retailers. Now and once restrictions have been fully lifted. Essential business or not, health and safety are the priority for consumers when governments conclude that it's reasonably okay for folks to once again return to visit public brick and mortar stores and locations. In thinking about retailers, consumers say they trust grocery stores, supermarkets, the most when it comes to ensuring a healthy and safe shopping environment. Look at gas stations. Remember, in our earlier graphic, 68% of consumers had said, excuse me, they continue to shop this essential industry throughout the crisis. Excuse me. Obviously out of necessity, but we can start to see how important providing a visibly healthy and safe shopping environment will be, especially to particular retail industries in the post-COVID environment. Our studies further show that there's a strong relationship between trust and confidence, and store staff appearing to take health and safety seriously. Appearing to take, demonstrating the application of health and safety protocols is extremely important. And again, one can see the relationship to trust for grocery stores versus gas stations. Separately, we ask consumers about their feelings in returning to the brick and mortar dealership environment. And taking that a step further, we grouped it by the overall engagement elements of sales and service. We find that consumers are more comfortable going to a dealer location for service than they are for sales. Yeah, in comparison to China, where Jacob earlier noted that they're further ahead on the curve and markets are opening a few weeks earlier than ours, we find relative similarities. The learnings: as the economy reopens, brands must take steps to ensure consumers feel safe while at their locations. Not doing so will risk customer defection, closed locations, and permanent damage to reputation and financial viability. And as we saw in the 2008 Great Recession, consumer anxieties can persist for years. Ultimately, safe business will be good business. So let me share a few more insights from the Consumer Health and Safety Index. Again, the index is an ongoing study where we surveyed approximately 2,000 consumers and applied driver analysis to understand what health and safety attributes are most important. We then used that consumer sentiment on health and safety to measure, via mystery shopping, industry and brand application of their health and safety protocols at their retail locations in these industries that you see here. The first wave did not include retail auto, again, but because of your staggered approach to reopening, but it did include a host of other industries and brands that we know the general consumer sentiment is relevant to retail auto as well. And as a side note, as your industry emergence, we're looking to include retail auto in our successive waves of the index. So more specific, there are the 18 elements that we measure consumer opinions on, and through a mystery shop process, measured how each industry and brand was doing, a relative impact. Sorry, I have a little trouble with the slides there. Taking those 18 elements and then looking across all the industries we measured in the first wave of the index, we then identified the relative importance of each attribute. As you can see, attributes demonstrated by the staff and brand and with the most visibility tend to lead the pack. We then looked at how these industries are doing in implementing health and safety protocols relative to the attributes, and then bucketed those into the groups you see here. Those are table stakes, differentiators, and those that are lower priority. The table stakes are the must-haves. Those visible health and safety elements consumers feel the most confidence in and expect to witness wherever they go in their retail shopping environments. This includes auto. These are things that the consumer will expect to see at dealerships. Next are the differentiators. These are the health and safety elements that further drive trust. They further identify the brand and location as taking the proactive steps to ensure a healthy and safety environment for the consumer. In talking to consumers, we're hearing a lot about retailers with manual and automated occupancy counting in management processes and social distancing signage, all real differentiators. Auto needs to take the same approach with variations that meet the dealership business models. The lower priority bucket shows those attributes, those consumer expectations on health and safety that are not necessarily as impactful and not really prevalent at brick and mortar locations right now. We believe that once these attributes become more prevalent, become more visible to the consumers, they will certainly grow in their level of impact. The bottom line is those retailers, those brands that focus on visible health and safety initiatives will grow and strengthen customer loyalty and share of wallet. And our study shows our consumers will be even more willing to pay for the services and products at retailers who are demonstrating these health and safety protocols. So here are the top 10 actions we recommend in retail auto to regain customer trust and build loyalty in this new environment. I'm just going to highlight a few here. Number one, just like we did and continue to do in the Ipsos index for other industries that we just spoke about, you should be continually identifying and isolating the key differentiators specific to the auto dealership environment. Number two, communicate with customers in advance as to what to expect when coming in for service. For example, the waiting room closed, oil change process. Build that confidence in your management of the health and safety process while they're on your site. Number four, here's a big one. You should reduce or eliminate in-person touch points wherever possible. For example, consolidate roles such as sales, F&I. Use DocuSign so there's less touch points. Number six was a good one, and as Jacob pointed out earlier, consumers are interested in test drives. So consider offering home delivery of the test drive process. Number eight, consider providing staff with branded face masks to not only promote the brand in your services, but more importantly, demonstrate that there's a brand level commitment to health and safety. And number 10, be prepared to adapt to the evolving consumer expectations and demands, which you'll know to do as we go. If you go back to number one, where we suggest continually identifying and isolating the key differentiators specific to the auto dealership environment. So I'd like to end this presentation with a quick example of how one dealership is implementing a health and safety protocol that's focused on the high-impact actions that will drive consumer confidence in their brand and certainly in their brand and ultimately drive consumer likelihood to return. Chevy Chase Acura's health and safety strategy builds consumer confidence from the start, with direct messaging to existing customers and proactive upfront messaging through their, what we would call, multiple digital touch points. As you can see here with their Facebook and web pages, they reassure consumers that health and safety of consumers and staff is top priority. And in putting the strategy to work, i.e. performance, Chevy Chase Acura is focused on the high-impact actions visible to consumers that will drive confidence and loyalty. Actions such as mandatory personal protective equipment for staff, limiting engagement to fewer staff, and home pickup and delivery. The high visibility actions we pointed out throughout this presentation. So that's what I wanted to share for now, and I'd like to pass it back to Mike Van Newkirk, who will share some more on the evolution of product requirements. Mike?
All right, thanks, Chris. If you could give me back control.
Yeah, you should have that now.
All right. Let's see if it works. It does. Great, thank you. All right, so my name is Mike Van Newkirk. I am responsible for the auto advisory work that we do at Ipsos, helping our automotive clients with product design and development needs as you're preparing to bring vehicles to market. First off, Murphy's Law would have it that somebody is mowing the lawn outside, so hopefully that's not bleeding through and causing too much trouble, and that you can hear me okay. So anyway, what I wanted to speak with you today about was share a little bit of insights that we are getting from consumers on how they're using vehicles now in this sort of COVID environment, so that we're in the middle of and just coming out of as restrictions are being lifted. So just a peek into what some of their activity is as it relates to the vehicle, as well as some features that there seems to be some genuine interest to that relates to vehicles and how COVID impacts that. So to support this, last week we went out and talked to about a little over 1,000 U.S. consumers, just to really start and dialogue with them on how are they using their vehicles. And to start that conversation, I wanted to go and look at how are they using their vehicles before COVID, in particular for commuting to their work. And not surprisingly, predominantly, the personal vehicle is the predominant choice here in the U.S. 67% of the people that we talked to were indicating that is their primary method for commuting to work. And other methods were much, much lower, but they tended to be more specific to where you live. So if you were an urban dweller, you did have a greater than the norm sort of dependency or use of other forms of transportation, whether they're paid for or their public available transportation. So things like ride sharing or bicycling or walking or using the bus or the rail systems in your city. Working from home primarily was really driven by those people who lived in suburban areas. So this is a slide actually shared in a previous webinar, but it's still very pertinent to how things are sort of falling out today in terms of how people are using their vehicle or the choices they're making for transportation. So when we looked at people who either have their own vehicle to drive or have previously been using ride sharing or public transportation, we said, well, when the closures and the restrictions end and you're able to go about again, whether it's to commute to work or for any other purpose, what will your intention be or what will your plan be? And 70%, roughly 7 out of 10 people who drive said, yeah, I'm going to return to driving immediately, where a much lower percentage are making that same kind of choice for ride sharing or public transportation, primarily around the concern, is it safe for me to enter back? If you look at those that will delay that decision, you'll see that more of the ride sharing and public transportation people that use those forms of mobility are going to delay, meaning I want to wait and see before I start using this again that this is safe, that it's okay for me to go back to that norm. And then lastly, there's a small portion of people in driving, but unfortunately a larger portion within ride sharing or public transportation that are saying, I may delay this return for quite some time or even stop use of it entirely. And again, this goes back to what we've talked about earlier in many of these presentations, is this concern or this fear that will it be safe? And so when you look at this, it really lines up well for those that are driving automotive, that they feel like they're in a more controlled environment, it's more personable, it's safer for them to go back to that format than we're seeing for other transportation modes. So sort of moving forward that conversation, we said, okay, post-COVID-19, what is your plan or what is your expectation for the commute to work? And most people said it's not really going to change. But a sizable portion, almost 3 in 10, 29%, believe that their commute will change. And this is primarily driven by those consumers that are younger, about at 33%. So these are the adults that are 18 to 34, or those with children, and then naturally those that live in urban areas. But one of the really interesting things that came out of this was that there was 42% of the people who don't currently own a vehicle but have indicated that they will be considering one now are expecting that their commute to work will change. So this is largely those people who may have used other forms but aren't confident that that is something they should do, and the vehicle now becomes an appealing option that they're considering. Asking people, well, how is that drive to work going to change, or how is that commute changing? Just under half of them said, I expect that I'll have to drive to work more often. So as we suspect, their transportation mode is going to shift. They're going to have to now use a personal vehicle to get to their employment. But at the same time, we're also seeing about 30% of the people saying, well, actually, I expect to drive less or commute less because I'll have the option to work from home more frequently. We have seen discussions and data around that working from home may be a more viable option for companies to offer up employees. And certainly there are situations where that'll become more necessary as we're coming back online. And when you look at the different groups, whether they say, oh, I'm going to drive more to work or I'm going to actually work more from home, we do see some sort of related differences where driving to work has been driven more by our respondents who are male, younger, and have a moderately strong income of 100K or more. This is also where we're seeing families with children sort of trending more toward, and those who are college educated. When we look at the folks that are expecting that they'll be able to work from home more now, it's more female, more of the elderly or older workforce, 55 plus, and with higher income, 125K plus. So there seems to be two very strong directions that these changes are headed in. One of the other things we wanted to look at is how are people using their vehicle. And we've heard about all these different new ways that people are doing things, whether it's graduation services or weddings or just using drive-through services more. So we asked, how frequently during the lockdown are you doing some of these things? And what was interesting is that we were seeing some pretty good sizable increase in things that were new, like religious services that are drive-through, and again, as I mentioned earlier, weddings and graduations. But we're also seeing people taking the vehicle out to enjoy a drive or to go through a drive-through service of some sort, including an uptick in drive-in movies. And so we were seeing that necessity, convenience, and availability was really driving some of the current activities while we're in the lockdown. And we asked, well, when lockdowns are lifted and you're able to do things, I guess, more freely post-COVID, there was a sentiment to include many of these things at more often, some of them at a pretty good increasing rate, like drive-through services will be up 20%. So these orange bars represent more what I would call the drive-through services that are on the increase the most. And the blue we've categorized as going out without getting out, meaning I'm using the vehicle in a way to get out of the house and do something, whether it's to take a drive or, as was mentioned by Menika in our earlier presentation, going on a vacation, but now doing it via vehicle, or even more drive-in movies. So there is this nice shift. Here's the interesting part. When we look at the groups that are trending the highest, it's mostly young people. So while these new usages may indicate some very interesting opportunities for new vehicle features, or for even people buying vehicles that previously didn't have them, the thing to keep in mind is that the strongest audience for this type of voice is younger adults. And so they may not have the most discretionary income. They may be more selective in what they would like to have in their vehicle. And so for those reasons, I guess there may be more, let's say, specific and conservative packaging that will be needed to support what they're able to afford in terms of discretionary income. And keeping in mind that with the unemployment rates that they are, oftentimes some of these people, these younger folks, are ones who are suffering at a great rate. So there is indications of some new types of usage that are may become popular. Whether they stay that way moving forward or we return to a more sort of normal way that we've been doing things is yet to be seen. But there definitely looks to be opportunities for providing some new supportive features and content within the vehicle. So with that, I'm going to shift a bit of the conversation now around feature interest and just a little discussion on where people, how they were reacting to us proposing some new features to them. So we looked at a list of features. It wasn't a long list. This was more just a sort of a dive in. And some of the features are currently available, and we included them because we wanted to have some anchor points. We know how appealing or important certain features can be to consumers, and we wanted to see some of the things that we thought might be supportive of these new use cases, or some of the things that are more supportive of creating a safe environment. And what we're calling these safe haven features are doing very well in terms of sort of that relative position to some of these other ones that we checked in on. So things like interior cabin air filtration system, touchless door and liftgate trunks, which are available in the market, and then antibacterial or germ-resistant surfaces. These are particularly popular, and considering that people are relatively concerned, and the vehicle definitely is the more popular choice when it comes to how I would prefer to be able to get around. Having these types of features is very appealing for that reason, creating not only an isolated environment, but one that I can be confident in is safe for me and my occupants, right? And so kind of diving in a little deeper on each of those three, what you'll see is, for instance, interior cabin air filtration systems showed what we called 68% interest. And that was really a combination of people who said, I find this to be essential in my next vehicle, and then sort of a slightly lower than that, what I would prefer to have in the feature, and the other choices being, I have no real preference, or I do not want this feature in my next vehicle. So when you consider 2/3 of consumers are saying it's either essential or I would like to have this, meaning this is something that they would select, that's a pretty strong voice. And it was strong, even stronger for those people who said, I do expect I'm going to have to drive more moving forward. Or that one group of potential new vehicle owners, those that don't currently own but are considering, you can see at 84% and 78% respectively. And the same sort of patterns hold true for a touchless door and liftgate at 61% and antibacterial and germ-resistant interiors at 60%. Certainly very strong among those who expect they're going to be driving more. And then, very strong also for those that are going to possibly be buying a vehicle when they don't currently own one. The one for touchless door was more right around that norm, but for the other measures, it was well above. So just kind of, and again, this was a very sort of cursory look at some of the features. There's probably other ones that we didn't have an opportunity to add in, and new emerging ones that are going to come forward, and definitely is something that we feel needs to be sort of tracked over time to see are these continuing to resonate, are these the right types of features for this new consumer, or at least our new consideration of how we operate vehicles. And I guess I want to leave it with what we're seeing as a sort of a redefining or an enhancing of safety. So if you kind of look back at, and it's sort of illustrated here on the right, safety was originally really around crash protection, right? In case I'm in an accident, you know, doing everything I can to assure that I'll be okay. So things like airbags and seatbelts will kind of fall into that category. And then we layered in, and we can make an argument whether it was crash prevention or personal security first, but if you just consider that those next two sort of categories sort of expanded safety. So things like ADAS features and warnings and alerts that are happening to help us understand situations or be aware or even take control of the vehicle in circumstances where it feels it needs to in order to avoid an accident. And personal security, and we had a while back, not too long ago, all the concern around cybersecurity and vehicles being able to be compromised, and so there was efforts to make sure that doesn't happen, and then alarms and other types of forms of assurance of personal security. But now what we're seeing is this desire for a safe environment within the vehicle. And so this becomes sort of that sort of expansion, yet again, of what safety is. Things like air filtration and touchless surfaces and antibacterial or different ways of disinfecting the interior. All of these are features where we're starting to see people resonate with. And there may be others that we should be looking at as well. So that just gives you sort of a, let's say, a bit of an indication of where U.S. consumers feel things are headed or what they'll need moving forward. The question for all of us is this part of what we'll call the new normal, or is this more of a just right now and it won't be sticky and these things will not be something consumers are expecting or willing to pay for moving forward? So hopefully that was helpful or even interesting just to give you a sense of some of the usage shifts that are happening, as well as some of the possible feature opportunities that are out there. And it's something we'll continue to be monitoring throughout the COVID situation and moving forward when we start to enter later into that journey back to what we will have as our new defined normal. What we're going to do next, we're going to be taking a moment to sort of switch gears and set up for what we call our What the Future Expert Panel session. There are going to be a series of folks joining us that are going to be talking about the evolution of transportation as they see it. So I'm going to turn the presentation back over. Hopefully I do this correctly. I think stop sharing and give it back to Ellen.
Actually, no, thank you very much everyone for joining for the session. And just to summarize, we had Jeff speak about, Jeff Schuster speak about the entire market and the forecast. Hopefully Modified B is what he was discussing, and also especially some of the impact on battery electric vehicles, which again sound a bit more hopeful than probably a few weeks ago. We had some discussions from our colleagues in China and Italy, some of the practices that they are seeing that seem to be across all dealerships there as they've opened up, and making sure not only that they do them, but that the consumer sees that they do them. And for example, even the drone delivery of the key we thought was very interesting because it's just an image that they're trying to convey to all their consumers. We also had Chris speak about some of the things, and what was very interesting from his session was that he had the requirements for the basics there. But again, some of the things to differentiate were things like branded masks. Again, trying to get people to understand that they are taking this seriously and that they have done it. So that was Chris about the retail, and Mike, of course, spoke about some of the product issues and product things that are changing. So thank you very much. Frank, did you have any other closing comments before we give it over to WTF?
Yeah, I wanted to point out, especially in Chris's presentation around the retail experience. Some of you may have already been out getting service. We're getting a lot of feedback from the field that things are not good from a retail experience standpoint around health and safety. A lot of people kind of taken aback with no mask, and a lot of things that we talked about are just not happening. Waiting rooms and other things that aren't really thought out. Now, I'm not going to necessarily pick on one OEM or another, but it does seem to be across the board to some extent. Chris mentioned that the need to monitor and audit is something that I believe the automotive community needs to think really hard about doing until they're at a stage where customers feel comfortable coming back to the dealership. So, I mean, again, we all want more sales, we want more service revenue, but we really need to make the customers feel that they're safe coming back. So really encourage that to happen. And then Chris also mentioned these differentiators. So automotive experience is different than going to a store, going to a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a grocery store, right? You've got instances where you have to wait a lot. None of the industries that Chris's group did, there's no studies on waiting in a doctor's office or things like that. So certain components we just weren't able to measure because they weren't open. There wasn't an ability for us to go in and benchmark. So as much as those points are helpful and are certainly relevant, there needs to be more. So I'm really encouraging, especially the OEMs or the service places like Jiffy Lube and such, to really look at that process and do their best to kind of fix it. So with that, that's me on my soapbox for a little bit. I'm going to turn it over now to Matt, who may start a little bit early because I know we have another 10 minutes. I was looking to see if there's any other further questions. The only ones I see are about the presentation again, which we've already talked about, that the links will be made available. More than likely, there will not be a PDF sent out. First of all, we've got some outside speakers. I would have to circle back to make sure that they're okay with it. But if you do have specific questions, or you'd like to see something or learn more, what we can do is put you in contact with the right individual, and they can decide if that's something that they want to share or not. But again, we'll be happy to help any way we can.